Apple just gave us one of the most difficult choices when it comes to buying a new computer, because right now there are so many choices, so many different paths, and the feature set and power of the new iPad Pro and MacBooks have never been so similar before. So, what do you go with? An iPad? A MacBook? Or even an iMac or a Mac Mini? What delivers the better value for most of you, and what should you know before pre-ordering or ordering any of these new M1 devices? Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here, and before we get into this video, I just wanted to give one final plug, one final push for the GadgetCast episode that is going to be live streamed tonight at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, that's on a separate channel called GadgetCast, so go subscribe to that so you don't miss it, because we will be joined by Luke Miani, Renee Ritchie, and Gary the Everyday Dad for a super stream where we talk all about Apple's latest releases. And because it is a live show, we will be answering your questions directly. So if you have any questions after watching this video, well, you know where to find me, and everyone else for that matter, and I look forward to seeing you there. But anyway, let's get back to the question at hand, because we now have a bunch of Apple products that are literally powered by the same exact M1 processor, all the way from a 24-inch desktop computer down to a tiny 11-inch tablet. All of these products might sound like they would serve different purposes, but realistically, you could pick any of these devices, and for 90% of the people watching this video, you would probably have a device that fits all of your needs for your personal computing lifestyle. Now, you might think that because they're all similar, you might think choosing one would be easier, but I think it makes it even more difficult. Because what really is the right computer for the right job? And when you're looking at all of these products, you might be in over your head trying to find which one you should get for taking online classes, for work, Zoom meetings, video editing, photography, coding, and so on. Well, let's try and answer this question together, because I really want to try and help people choose whatever product is going to be the best for them. Now, right off the bat, I think when we're talking about different computer products, a lot of people are inherently concerned about performance. And when you look at the M1 chip, these products mostly have the same chip inside of them. The real exception here is the entry-level MacBook Air and the entry-level M1 iMac, both of which ship with a 7-core GPU instead of an 8-core GPU. In practice, this doesn't make a whole world of difference, but if you're trying to eke out every bit of GPU power inside of your computer, you may want to look into buying the 8-core versions. Other than that, the M1 is spec'd to be exactly the same, from the 11-inch iPad Pro to the 24-inch iMac with 8 CPU cores and 8 GPU cores. When we talk about performance, you might think that because every product we listed here has the same exact M1 chip, that they would all perform the same. And while performance on all of these products are going to be great, there are a few products in the lineup that are going to eke out maximum performance. Products like the MacBook Pro, Mac Mini, and the new iMac all have active cooling systems inside of the machine. That's a fancy way of saying that these products have a fan inside of them that can actively cool the processors, while products like the MacBook Air and iPad Pro don't, and they're passively cooled by throttling down the chip's performance. This active cooling means that these M1 processors can sustain higher clock speeds for longer periods of time, again, without the need to throttle down to cool themselves. For basic tasks, this isn't really going to impact much. You're still going to get snappy performance on any of these M1 computers. But for video editors, developers, 3D modeling, really any task that you know will traditionally cause your computer to run hotter, well, getting an M1 machine with a fan inside of it can lead to noticeable improvements. I've seen my export times in Final Cut cut by half with machines with a fan inside of them, but I should also compliment the M1 here. Even without active cooling, my MacBook Air was still able to export video faster than my 27-inch Intel iMac. So you're really looking at a choice here of better and best, because I assure you, even if you're buying the MacBook Air, you will be able to edit videos photos, do development, whatever you gotta do. It's just whether you wanna do them a little bit faster. Displays are also important to note here, as each of these products have different displays. The worst on paper is the MacBook Air display, which granted is similar to the MacBook Pro display. Both of them have a 13-inch Retina display, and both offer the same quality display, but with one exception, and that is that the MacBook Air maxes out at 400 nits of brightness, whereas the MacBook Pro can go up to 500 nits of max brightness. Both of these displays on paper are actually beaten by the 11-inch iPad Pro. Again, similar quality to the display with P3 wide color support, Retina resolution, and so on, but the 11-inch iPad Pro gets even brighter at 600 nits of screen brightness, and the display gets a faster 120Hz refresh rate, which not only makes the display look smoother, but can be beneficial when playing high frame rate video games. Now, you do make a trade-off in display size, so if you're looking for a decent sized workstation, well, the 13-inch Air or Pro is the way to go. But if you're looking for the smallest form factor possible, the iPad Pro might be the right choice for you. Of course, we're all fighting over second place here, because all of these products are significantly worse than Apple's latest 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which uses a different display technology from the 11-inch model with its new mini LED display. This gives the iPad Pro, on paper, the best looking display with a 1,000,000:1 contrast ratio, 1000 nits of full screen brightness, that's double the MacBook Pro screen brightness, and up to 1600 nits of peak screen brightness when watching HDR video. And with about the same screen size as the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro. And it still comes with that faster 120Hz ProMotion display. So if you're all about watching content using your display outdoors, or if you just need this caliber of display for working with HDR video, well, the 12.9-inch iPad Pro is clearly the way to go. It sounds like it's going to be above and beyond any of these other displays. I shouldn't have to say this, but there's also another advantage to iPad displays, and that is that they have touchscreens, which really does give them advantages in certain areas compared to the Macs. Most notably, I would say that if you use drawing applications like Procreate, well, all you need is an iPad and an Apple Pencil, and you have a full-blown drawing tablet. So for that type of workflow, it really is great to use an iPad. Also, if you're like a student and you like to handwrite notes, well, again, these are experiences you can only get on the iPad, whereas with the Mac, you have to use a trackpad or a mouse and a keyboard. Of course, we should also mention the desktop computers in the lineup, which share their own unique advantages. The 24-inch iMac comes with a similar quality display to the MacBook Pro with 500 nits of screen brightness, but on a much larger scale with a 4.5K Retina display. So if you don't care or need mobility and just need a powerful desktop workstation with a decent sized display, the 24-inch iMac and 13-inch MacBook Pro start at the same price. You just need to decide if you value a bigger screen over portability. Now, the Mac Mini doesn't have a display, but that also means it can be paired with any display. So theoretically, you could get the $5,000 Pro Display XDR, hook this thing up, and beat out every other display we mentioned in terms of quality and screen real estate. But I think that's an unlikely scenario for the Mac Mini and Mac Mini users. And if that isn't an unlikely scenario for you, let's talk, because I could use some money. But anyway, the advantages of the Mac Mini here is that you can pair any display to it. So that versatility can be beneficial if you have a third-party display that you prefer over the built-in Mac displays, or if you want a larger display than 24 inches. Now, with the Mac Mini and the iMac, you do have to make sure that you are comfortable with the desktop form factor. These two Apple desktops might be their most portable ones yet, to be honest. A 9-pound iMac, I can totally carry that to Starbucks. But when we're talking about real portability here, you really only get that with the MacBooks and iPads. So no matter which one of these products you choose, you need to know if you're only going to be using these products at home, or if this is a product you're going to want to take with you to the coffee shop, on airplane flights, to school, or maybe you just want to lay down on the couch and use this device. And traditionally, we would normally talk about sacrificing power for portability, but with the M1 chip, there really isn't a sacrifice in power, especially if you're getting the MacBook Pro with the fan. So you really just have to make a choice here. Do you want to be stationary or do you want to be portable? And I wouldn't necessarily worry about the power. It's going to be very similar. In terms of the most portable device, it's kind of a toss-up. Theoretically, an 11-inch iPad Pro would be the most portable, but when you start adding the weight and thickness of optional accessories like the Magic Keyboard, you can start adding on a lot of weight, especially on that 12.9-inch iPad Pro. I think battery life is ultimately the more important deciding factor for ultimate portability though, and while all of these products have good battery life, with the iPad Pros on paper getting 10 hours of reliable battery life, nothing, and I mean nothing, is going to beat the M1 MacBook Air or Pro. The Air has an 18-hour rating for battery life, and the Pro has a 20-hour rating. This battery life can change depending on what you're using your computer for, but in all my use of the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air, the battery life has always been one of the standout features, and battery anxiety when out of the house is just a thing of the past. So you'll never be hunting for a wall outlet in the coffee shop, and you can usually just leave your power brick at home without worrying about the battery. Now, although we talked about these computers having the same M1 chip, they don't share the same operating system, and deciding between iPadOS and macOS can be a really difficult choice. And while I do have a preference for macOS, I do think it's all personal preference, because I've met people who think iPadOS is easier to use, they like the touchscreen interface, and they enjoy an operating system that always focuses on a single app. And iPadOS does have advantages in the amount of cheaper apps it offers, like LumaFusion, Procreate, and Affinity Photo. All amazing apps on the iPad that are cheaper than apps you would find on the Mac. For macOS, it's a more mature platform that gives users more choices to make, like you can download apps from the web instead of the App Store. And while you can do split-screen multitasking on the iPad, well, macOS gives you a full windowing system. So for me, it's much easier to manage multiple apps. And in terms of pro applications like Final Cut Pro or Logic, well, I need to use those apps, or I prefer to use those apps to make my YouTube channel run. So for me, I would always pick macOS, or maybe not always, but at least for now. But for you, the decision might be totally different. Okay, value. Value is usually one of the most important aspects of buying a product, and this one's going to be interesting. So if we're looking at the pricing of all of these products, honestly, I think all of these products are pretty good values, and some of them are amazing values. The Mac Mini is a $699 powerhouse desktop, while the $1,299 iMac is a full-featured workstation complete with a 1080p webcam, speakers, and a 24-inch 4.5K display with the iMac screen quality. A 4.5K display with the M1, all that stuff thrown in, that's a great value. And then you have the MacBook Air, $1,000 for a laptop that really can do it all. So much so, in fact, that I think it's one of the best laptops ever made. And on paper, even the $800 iPad Pro and even the $1,100 12.9-inch iPad Pro with a mini LED display, with the amount of hardware you get out of it, it seems like a reasonable value. However, there is one glaring exception here, and that is if you are buying the accessories for the iPad Pro, you need to realize that the official Magic Keyboard adds at least another $300 to your cost, and if you want the Apple Pencil, add another $129 on top of all that. And if you start speccing out something like the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, you're getting into really expensive computer territory really quickly, so you need to be careful. So overall, I think some of the cheaper Macs are the better value, but the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, those specs, I mean, that screen sounds amazing. Honestly, hardware specs like this are something I want to talk about in more detail in a later video when I actually get my hands on these products. But I know there's going to be questions in this video of should I go with an 8GB or 16GB memory configuration for the Mac? And honestly, I think anyone using it for hobby or professional tasks, the 16GB upgrade is well worth your money. But for basic users, you're going to be fine with 8GB. For the iPad, well, I really have no clue what to expect out of the 16GB model, because at this point, unless Apple has something new with the software coming out at WWDC, I'm not sure if anyone can really take advantage of an iPad Pro with 16GB of RAM. I'd tell most users for the iPad just to buy based on your storage needs right now. So if you need a 1TB iPad Pro, well, congratulations, you're getting one with 16GB of memory with it. But if you don't need 1TB, I think you'll be fine with 128 or 256. Don't spend extra right now thinking you'll need all that RAM, even though we might need it based on what Apple's future plans are for the iPad. It's never good to buy something based on the expectations of a product. We need to use the information we have right now. Overall though, whether you're getting an iPad or a Mac, with these new M1 machines, I really don't think there's a wrong answer. Different choices are going to be better for different people. And hopefully, I helped narrow down your decision and making your purchasing decision process easier. Also, I know I couldn't be super specific in this video, mostly because of the broad topic we're covering here and comparing all of these different devices together. And the fact that we still need to get our hands on these newest iMacs and iPad Pros to do a true comparison. So if you want a super detailed iPad versus MacBook Air or iMac versus Mac Mini video in the future, well, you gotta get subscribed because I'll be making those in-depth videos when those products come out later this May. If you like this video and you found it helpful in your pre-purchase or pre-order process, make sure you give me a like. If you plan on buying any of these products, consider helping the channel out and using one of my affiliate links. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.